The future of Australia as a cohesive, peaceful, relaxed, comfortable and prosperous nation is now extremely unlikely, at least for the next few years. I said repeatedly that the May 3 election was the most important of our lives, and so it has turned out to be, in the worst possible way. There is no sugarcoating what has occurred. It was the perfect storm, a canny and cunning Labor Party, an utterly inept opposition, and the perversity of our idiotic compulsory preferential voting system, which together have left us with a hard-left government that 2/3 of the population did not vote for, wielding an unbelievably dangerous level of power. Poor fellow my country. To put it bluntly, with hard-left Labor holding a massive majority in the lower house and the Marxist Greens holding the balance of power in the Senate, Australia is now, to all intents and purposes, in the grips of socialism. So what can we look forward to? Firstly, we're going to get poorer. That's a no-brainer. Socialism is a guaranteed recipe for rapidly decreasing prosperity. Already, according to The Economist magazine, Australia employs a larger proportion directly through the public sector than any other nation assessed. That's insane. A gigantic parasitic blob draining our financial resources and sucking the lifeblood of innovation and individuality out of our nation. And because of all the increased regulation that those bureaucrats insist on imposing to justify their jobs through things like the Nature Positive Plan and all the Indigenous claptrap we're going to get, the amount of red, green and black tape will literally strangle investment and productivity. Expect business investment in mining, agriculture and manufacturing to shun Australia and head to more favourable environments such as Donald Trump's resurgent America. Add to our economic downgrading the ongoing and increasing insanity of net zero, which will be ramped up under Labor and the Greens, and everybody's standard of living will be dramatically squeezed and curtailed over the coming years. Yours, mine and everybody's, except of course the politicians. As people will become poorer, they will demand more from the welfare state, and as investment heads overseas, the major source of revenue will be you, the taxpayer. According to the Australian newspaper, Labor's unrealised capital gains tax has been carefully designed by Treasury so it can be extended to all investment assets and maybe one day to the family home. End of quote. So Labor and the Greens will raid your superannuation and then come after your investments and, according to that report, finally come after your home. All the while, the unrealised capital gains scam, which deliberately exempts politicians, oh, what a surprise, means our socialist leaders, the party, enjoy a first-class lifestyle which increasingly impoverished taxpayers will be coughing up for. As people become poorer, they become more vocal and more disgruntled, which is why this Labor Greens government will insist on censoring free speech and any criticism of the government which they will call misinformation and disinformation. Oh, and don't forget, the government is also exempt from the misinformation and disinformation laws. How convenient. Labor and the Greens will become, in the words of New Zealand's socialist leader during COVID, your sole source of the truth. Welcomes to country and climate change catastrophism will become the new state religions. I mean, they already are, if we're honest. Those who voice their objections will be labelled the far right. Sadly and disgracefully, we can expect to see yet more unchecked anti-Semitism, fuelled mainly by the far left and extremists within the Muslim communities. Peter Dutton's greatest legacy is his unbridled support for Israel. We need new heroes in Parliament who are as unequivocal in their unflinching support for Australian Jews and for the state of Israel. If I paint a bleak picture, it is, alas, because the picture is bleak. The ABC and the left-wing media will be emboldened and empowered to savagely attack anyone who they deem to be wrong thinkers in the culture wars. Under Albo 2.0, anything to do with so-called First Nations will be ramped up to 11 on a scale of 10, as will all the climate nonsense, as will all the gender nonsense, and tragically, as will the demonising and falsifying of our proud British colonial Australian history. I hope I'm wrong, but I'll be very surprised if Australia Day is celebrated in anything approaching traditional style in coming years, if it survives at all. The biggest losers in coming years will, apart from the taxpayer, be our children and grandchildren. The collapse in our education standards from only a couple of decades ago has been terrifying, and it's going to get even scarier. And as for crime and personal safety, you only have to look at the hellhole that is Melbourne after a decade of Dan Andrews to see how much damage unbridled Labor can do. Expect Labor to introduce the voice under the guise of truth-telling and macarata and create a vast bureaucracy of highly paid Indigenous jobs, specialising in shaming white Anglo-Australians, splashing the welfare dollars around and doing nothing to actually help the lives of those Indigenous Australians in remote communities. Unless, of course, they are lucky enough to hop on the bureaucratic gravy train. Expect more and more migrants to flood into our cities because Labor and the Greens senators all ideologically believe in open borders and also, with some justification it would seem, believe that increased migrant numbers in the right electorates means more votes for Labor. So, more congestion, more social disruption, likely more anti-Semitism and more stress on housing and jobs. A dangerous combination. Expect an upsurge in crime and social dysfunction across Australia, fuelled by a lack of genuine prospects and the all-pervasive blanket of the grievance industry, which will now, in my opinion, become this nation's most active and noticeable industry. So, are there any bright spots? Not many, but I'm an optimist by nature, so I'll do my best. One bright spot is that the size of the win will probably see Labor overstretch and go too far and too fast on too many issues, and this will certainly make people wake up to the danger we are in. Another bright spot is Donald Trump. J.D. Vance has already made clear that the Trump administration will not tolerate its allies trashing core democratic values such as free speech. Free speech is going to be absolutely critical in the years ahead, and it may well be the Americans who preserve ours. But above all, events. It was Harold Macmillan who supposedly said, when asked, what were the most difficult things about being Prime Minister? Events, dear boy, events. All the best-laid socialist plans of this Labor and Greens government could easily come to a crashing halt due to unforeseen international events or even local events. The most foreseeable is, of course, the blackouts that await us due to the renewables lunacy of Chris Bowen, which will now be ramped up. But whatever lies ahead, one thing is for sure, the Liberal Party seriously let Australia down at the election. 2/3 of Australians voted against the voice, and 2/3 of Australians did not put the Albanese government down as their first choice. Our country is now being run by a government that only 1 in 3 Australians wanted. Those 2 out of 3 Australians who do not favour Labor desperately need a political party that represents them and opposes this socialist nightmare we are heading into. The Liberal Party failed us and, I would argue, deceived us. That must not be allowed to happen again. The bedwetters and lovies need to be dumped from the Liberal Party, or alternatively, the party will split. Australia's silent majority must have political representation that works. Conservative politicians need to get their act together fast and be ready for when, as will happen, the right opportunity, the right event comes along. But finally, the great news. Yesterday, Senator Jacinta Nampijinpa-Price announced she is joining the Liberal Party, moving across from the Nats to the Liberal Party, which means she can stand in a leadership role. As I've long said on this show and on Outsiders, Jacinta is not only a future Prime Minister, but is the most charismatic Member of Parliament with that rarest of political skills, the ability to speak common sense. A leadership ticket of Angus Taylor and Jacinta Price is the single greatest hope for the Liberal Party, in cahoots with that great talents like Matt Canavan, Alex Antic, James Patterson, many, many others, to ensure the coalition thrives to deliver us from the socialist grip of Labor and the Marxist Greens.